All right, thank you so much everyone for being here. We're going to talk about Ayurvedic daily routine and self-care, as all of you probably know by now. I'm so glad to be here with you today to chat about this. Okay, so in this webinar, we are going to go over just some basics to start. I want to keep it really simple. I want this to be accessible because daily routine and self-care are such helpful tools in stressful times that I really want you to understand how you can apply them to your own life without feeling like it's unattainable. So first, we're just going to go over what is Ayurveda. That's sort of the lens through which we're going to be looking at all of this wellness stuff. We're going to talk about the doshas, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, just a little bit. Maybe you've heard of them before. Maybe you've heard of them for the first time when you were taking the mind-body quiz on my website. And if you're interested in that topic and want to know more, we do have a recorded Foundations of Ayurveda webinar that would be really a great thing to go back to. But I'll keep it accessible for now. We'll also talk, as we're talking about the doshas, we'll get into just a few tips to balance each of the doshas or mind-body types so you can start thinking about self-care as it relates to your dosha. From there, we're going to talk about why daily routine and self-care are important. And then we'll get into a basic Ayurvedic daily routine. We'll go through the whole day from morning to night and talk about some key pieces of a daily routine, why we do them, why they matter, and why it ultimately supports us. And then we'll get into some key self-care practices or self-care rituals, including dry brushing, which I know some people were eager to learn about, and spring is a great time to be doing that. So let's just get into a bit of a review right now. What is Ayurveda? Ayurveda, for those of you who don't know, or for those of you who need a reminder, is an ancient holistic healing science from India. It's about 5,000 or 6,000 years old. It's very old, so many, many years of case studies of people trying this alternative medicine out and really honing in on what works best. Yeah, over thousands of years. It's pretty mind-blowing. So Ayurveda is a full spectrum system of healing. That means that it includes mind, body, and emotional, spiritual support. So in Ayurveda, we talk about diet and lifestyle, like daily routine and self-care practices, but we also talk about herbal medicine. We talk about oils for the body, even massage and yoga, meditation. It all sort of falls within the Ayurvedic realm. And that's something that I really love about Ayurveda is it's really speaking to the whole body and how all parts of ourselves relate. You know, from the Ayurvedic perspective, we could talk about how stress, emotional well-being relates to digestion because it really is all connected. And Ayurveda gives us the language to talk about those things, which is pretty amazing. And so how does Ayurveda work? How do we use it in our own lives? As I mentioned, there are components of diet and daily routine, like lifestyle and herbs, things that we bring in from the Ayurvedic perspective. But it's really about this idea of cultivating balance, which is that if you can make small shifts in basic parts of your life, like diet, nutrition, and daily routine, you can actually experience big improvements in your wellness. So it's not about making huge changes, changing your whole diet, changing your whole life. It's really about integrating little practices over time to suit your individual needs. So how do we know what our individual needs are? Well, that's where the doshas, or the mind-body types, come into play. So if you took the dosha quiz, you can find it on my website, cultivatebalance.com. Scroll down, you'll see it. It's called How Do I Explain Myself? The reason why we titled it that is because once you understand your mind-body type from this sort of Ayurvedic lens, it can really give us some insights into why we are the way that we are, why we crave certain foods, why we're drawn to certain activities, why we act in certain ways. It all can sort of be explained through the lens of Ayurveda, which is pretty amazing. So basically the idea behind the Ayurvedic doshas is that we all, well, let me tell you what they are. They're vata, there are three of them, three categories: vata, pitta, and kapha. And each one is basically a grouping of the 5 elements. So the 5 elements are earth, water, fire, air, and space or ether. So vata dosha is a combination of the air and space elements. So people who have a lot of vata dosha in their constitution tend to be have sort of the qualities of the wind. So they're generally very talkative, very adaptable. These are creative people. They're often artists. They're very inspired. They're very active, great communicators. And so those are vata type people, okay? And then we have pitta type people. If you have a pitta constitution, you're more prone to being very organized and focused, very passionate. They can be a little bit competitive, but they have more of the fiery qualities because pitta is made up of the fire element and a little bit of water, but mostly think of it as fire. And then we have kapha dosha, which is made up of earth and water. That's my dosha type. People with kapha dosha are generally more loyal and patient, a little slower and steady, and good with like endurance, whereas vata types are very quick. So you can sort of see how the different doshas share the qualities of the elements that describe them. So pitta dosha, the fiery dosha, I described as passionate. Those people have a lot of passion. You can see how passion is like a fiery quality for a person to have. So that was just a quick overview of the different doshas. The idea behind the doshas is that we all have all of the elements, all 3 of the doshas within our constitutions. And they then reflect sort of how we show up in the world in terms of our body type, but also our personality type, our qualities for interacting. And but the thing about it is that we all have all 3 doshas, but usually one is more dominant and is more present in our personality and in our body type. And because that one is stronger in our personality and in our body type, our mind-body constitution, that's the one that we generally want to pay most attention to, because that's the one that is most likely to go out of balance. So Ayurveda is a mode of preventative wellness. So the idea of prevention comes in when we start talking about the doshas. If you know your dominant constitution, if you know what imbalances you tend toward, then you can take action in diet and lifestyle in your choices to bring yourself back into balance before it really even becomes that big of a deal, before you really get sick. Maybe you just notice a little something coming on, you bring your dosha back into balance. So that's how Ayurveda works in terms of the doshas. I know that is a lot of information, but as I mentioned, you can always go back and review the Foundations of Ayurveda webinar to really get into the doshas and start to understand even more how they manifest in the mind and body, and how they relate to you. But I just wanted to give you a little background because it's all relevant to discussing daily routine and self-care. So before we get into the heart of this webinar, which is daily routine and self-care, I just want to talk briefly about some tips for balancing each dosha so that you can start to think about what types of self-care practices or routine items might be best for you if you know your dosha type. If you don't know your dosha type, you might start to have an idea based on how I just described them, or you might just go take the quiz on my website or email me after this and we'll talk. So if you know that you are a vata type constitution, so that the air and space elements coming together, generally like very creative, inspired, adaptable people are vatas, then ways to keep vata balanced would be committing to a regular daily routine. Vatas especially benefit from daily routine because vata, the air and space elements, are very erratic. So when we bring structure in, it's balancing. That's this idea of bringing balance into our lives. Vatas also benefit from eating well-cooked and well-spiced food because Vata, the air and space elements, is cold and rough. And so again, to bring in balance, if you bring in more warm cooked food, it's going to balance Vata dosha so it doesn't get too out of control for people who have a lot of that dosha in them already. And the last tip for, especially for balancing dosha, is to massage your feet with sesame oil before bed. It's very grounding. Vata, air and space, needs to be grounded to feel balanced. Let's talk about some ways to balance Pitta dosha. And again, I just want you to keep these things in mind. Might start to give you some ideas for how you want to build your own daily routine. And then we're really going to discuss key daily routine items that everyone can be doing, regardless of dosha, okay? So ways to keep Pitta dosha in balance would be to limit the amount of spicy and salty foods that you have. If you know you're a fiery type person, eating really spicy food can actually increase imbalance in your body, whether it makes you a little more irritable or it gives you a skin rash, because Pitta people are also prone to imbalances showing up on the skin. That's something we can get into more later. And another way to keep Pitta in balance, if you know you have higher Pitta in your constitution, would be to spritz yourself with rose water, because it's very cooling, and Pitta dosha always needs to be cooled. That's like the dominant quality of fire is that it's hot. And then lastly, a way to keep Pitta in balance is to avoid too much exposure to direct sunlight, because that heat can not only be aggravating to the skin of Pittas who have especially sensitive skin, but it can also just be generally irritating because it's too much heat to an already hot type of constitution. Okay, now let's talk about Kapha. Ways to keep Kapha happy. So Kapha is the earth and water dosha. Okay, that's my dosha. Ways to keep Kapha balanced would be to exercise, like to move your body pretty frequently, because if you think of the qualities of earth and water, it's pretty heavy and slow. So if you want to apply balancing qualities, which we do, that's how Ayurveda works, it's by applying balancing qualities, you really want to bring in some like light activating energy to balance out that heavy, slow energy that Kaphas have a tendency toward. The other thing that's great for people with a lot of Kapha in their constitution and in the daily routine is to limit the amount of dairy that they have, because dairy is also similar to the qualities of Kapha, of earth and water. It's heavy and slow. And so because like increases like, if Kapha, earth and water type people, eat too much dairy that shares those same qualities, it's probably going to increase their Kapha and take them into an imbalance, like sinus congestion or depression or lethargy. All of those sort of heavy type of imbalances are Kapha tendencies. So we keep Kapha in balance by just consuming a bit less dairy, being mindful about that. And the last quick way to keep Kapha in balance is to add a lot of warming spices to your food to sort of activate it. The same idea of getting your body moving, you really want to bring heat and activation into everything that you do as a Kapha. So spices like cumin and coriander and black pepper, even cayenne, are really a great thing for Kaphas to be including. Okay. So now that we've gotten through all the background information, hopefully that is making sense to all of you. If you have questions, feel free to send them over. We're ready to talk about daily routine and self-care, which is really why we all came here. So let's see. Just take a moment to think about how you feel when you get into a routine. What do you notice happens in your life when you're in a routine that's working for you? Do you notice that you feel better? Do you notice that you sleep better? That you are more productive? That you're happier? I notice all of those things for myself when I'm able to have a routine. I notice when I don't have a routine, my sleep is off, I'm really cranky, I don't like eat regular meals, so I find myself being like really hungry, and then I eat too late at night, then I go to sleep later. It's sort of being out of a routine sort of spirals me to then continue to be out of a routine and continue to not feel that good in my day-to-day. I don't feel like I'm getting as much done, for example, and that's something I really value as an entrepreneur, especially is productivity. So one of the reasons why daily routine is so important is because it enables us to feel better, to get more done, to be happier and better rested, but it also helps relieve stress and anxiety to have a routine. Stress and anxiety are a Vata dosha type imbalance. Anyone can experience it, even if you're not a Vata person. We can all experience a Vata imbalance, which might even be sort of happening collectively now. A lot of people are stressed and anxious. And so the structure of a routine really helps balance that Vata dosha, that energy of movement in the mind and of anxiety that often keeps us up at night and sort of instills fear in our minds. So structure is very balancing to the erratic nature of anxiety and stress. And when we bring structure into our lives via daily routine, we can reduce stress and anxiety. Very important. Setting up a daily routine also really frees up our minds to experience more creativity and more productivity, because you don't have to make so many decisions in a day and think, okay, what do I need to be doing right now? You just already sort of know what works for you, and you can flow from one thing to the next rather than getting sort of caught in between. Daily routine also gives us the opportunity to realign with the rhythms of nature, which is sort of a key of Ayurveda and of connecting with the elements, is to wake up when the sun comes up, and go to sleep when the sun goes down, and just realign our bodies with how they naturally want to be interacting with the world around us. Daily routine helps us set that up. It also is a really great tool for accountability in bringing things into our lives that we know we want to bring in and maybe are having a hard time keeping track of. Daily routine is a tool for accountability, and ultimately a tool to help us achieve goals, which is great. And now let's talk about a little more specifically about self-care. Why is self-care important? The thing that I really think of when I think of self-care, and this is a part of our philosophy with Cultivate Balance, is this idea of the more you are able to take care of yourself, the better care you take of yourself, the better care you're able to take of everyone around you. The more energy, the more vitality you have to take care of others, which means that you're better able to show up to your work, to your family, to your community, to the planet. Taking care of ourselves is really the key to making anything else happen in the world, because it gives us the energy that we need to thrive and to feel good and to feel inspired to really do our work on this planet. I mean, it's very important. And I think sometimes people get confused and think like, oh, self-care is just like buying fancy skincare. Absolutely not. Self-care is really about the practice of being kind and being intentional with yourself. And if that means buying fancy skincare, go right ahead. But it doesn't have to be that. Self-care should be accessible to you at any moment with just the tools that you have at your disposal in your home. And that's what we're going to talk about. And maybe just take a moment to reflect and think, what things do you do for yourself that make you feel cared for? What does self-care look like for you? Again, maybe it's fancy skincare. Maybe it's reading a book before bed. Maybe it's going for a walk after breakfast. Like start to think about what practices you have that you know feel good for you. There's a question in there. I'll try to come back to that later. So as you're thinking about self-care for yourself, we're going to talk about daily routine, and basically daily routine essentially provides a structure for self-care. See how those things sort of relate together. But before we get into daily routine items, let's just talk a little bit about how the doshas relate to the structure of our day. So again, the doshas are Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. They're each a combination of different elements. I'm going to reiterate it again. Vata is the air and space dosha. Pitta is the fire dosha with a little bit of water. And Kapha is the earth and water dosha. Okay, so each dosha actually corresponds with a different time of the day. This is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about aligning our days with the rhythms of nature and with the elements. We can actually align our day with the doshas in order to utilize the energy available to us at different times of the day, which is pretty awesome. So I'll break that down just a little bit, and then we're going to go through specific daily routine items. So basically, from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. is a vata time of day. That's a really good time to wake up. That's why we say to wake up with the sun. From 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. is a kapha time of day, an earth and water time of day. I'll talk to you about how to best use that time of day. From 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. is a pitta time of day, a fiery time of day. We're going to talk about what that means also. And then from, let's see, 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. is a vata time of day again. From 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. is a kapha time of day again. And from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. is a pitta time of day. So just know that, just keep that in your mind, and I will weave why that's important in as we talk about each different self-care or daily routine item and why it is structured where it is in the day. Okay, and I'm not offering slides right now, but if you want to write things down, now is a great time to grab a pen and paper if you don't have one already. So the first most important thing in an Ayurvedic daily routine is to wake up with or just before the sun. This is huge because, as I mentioned, this early part of the day up until about 6 a.m. is the vata time of day. Vata is the dosha of air and space. It's like the wind, and it embodies the energy of movement. So if we can wake ourselves up, get ourselves up and moving out of bed during that tail end of the vata time of day, it's actually physically easier to get up, to get moving, because we're capitalizing on the energy of movement that is available to us during that vata time of day. You might notice that if you sleep in till like 9 or 10, even 8, it's harder to get out of bed. You feel heavier in your body because that is a kapha time of day. Kapha is the energy of earth and water. It is heavier and slower. So we want to try and wake up early during the vata time of day so that it's literally easier to get ourselves up and out of bed, so that we feel an energy of lightness like vata dosha, air and space. And then another thing that I find to be really important is to just, when you wake up in the morning, take 3 deep intentional breaths and think of something that you're grateful for, and do all of this before you check your phone, before you check your email, before you check your social media. Just take a moment to be really intentional, to check in with yourself, and to start your day off right by thinking of something that you are grateful for, or someone that you are grateful for, and just connecting with your breath, taking deep and intentional breaths. This one is actually like one of the hardest routine items because we're so programmed to wake up and look at our screens and start making a list and start planning for the day. But I encourage you to give yourself that pause to breathe, to be in stillness. 1 or 2 more minutes before you fly out of bed isn't going to make too much of it. It's not going to set you behind on your schedule, but it will ideally move you into the rest of your day with just a little bit more intention, a little more mindfulness, a little more thoughtfulness. In a true Ayurvedic daily routine, this is actually a time that you would meditate, but it's hard to meditate fully, to commit that much time to meditating in the morning before work, before there's so many things to do. So I just encourage you to take 3 breaths and to think of something that you're grateful for when you wake up in the morning before engaging with technology. Okay, and then you wake up, you're out of bed, scrape your tongue. If you don't have a tongue scraper, you need to go get one right now. It's basically like a U-shaped metal thing. I should have brought mine over, but you use it to scrape the toxins off your tongue. There's a few reasons for this. It's pretty interesting. In Ayurveda, different locations on the tongue correspond with different bodily organs. So there's a component of when you scrape your tongue, you're activating all of those bodily organs. Of cool. So it's one way to activate the body and to tell your body to wake up and to start moving. But it's also cleansing. You'll notice when you scrape your tongue that there's usually some sort of coating on your tongue, like a yellow or whitish coating. And that is ama. We call that ama in Ayurveda. It means toxic buildup. Usually toxic buildup happens because your body isn't digesting something that you've eaten the day before, a couple days before, very well. So when we scrape our tongue, not only does it sort of activate our body and wake us up, but it also cleanses those toxins off the tongue so we're not re-ingesting them. And it enables us to better experience taste on the tongue. Taste is also a very important component of Ayurveda. In Ayurveda, there are 6 tastes: sweet, sour, salty, bitter, pungent, which is spicy, and astringent, which is like drying, like pomegranate is astringent, for example. So we want to experience all 6 tastes because, again, there's this communication that happens on our tongue with our bodily organs. So when you experience taste, it's actually the first stage of digestion. So when we cleanse our tongues, when we scrape our tongues, our body is better able to experience all 6 tastes, better able to initiate that community between tongue and organs in the initial stages of digestion. So scrape your tongue in the morning, go get a tongue scraper. They're like $7. It's a great investment. It will make your whole life better. Okay, and so once you've done that, your tongue is scraped, your mouth is clean, you're ready to have your first beverage of the morning, which is not coffee. It's warm lemon water with honey. If you don't love lemon, you can also have lime. Lime's a little more cooling, so it's better to do lime like in the summer or if you're a pitta type person. But it's really important to hydrate our bodies as soon as we wake up. That's why I say don't have coffee first, because that's so dehydrating. You really want to hydrate your body. The combination of lemon and honey is going to be gently cleansing, so it will help encourage a bowel movement in the morning, which is important Ayurvedically to get things moving in your body. And it's so important. The heat, lemon is heating. It also kindles digestion. So it activates your digestive fire so that your body will more readily be able to process whatever you eat for breakfast. It sort of like warms it up, which is great because digestion is super important in Ayurveda. And then another key routine item still in the morning is to move your body in some way, whether that's just like doing a little bit of stretching in your house. It really depends how much time you have. For me, this is when I like to do my main exercise for the day. I like to go for a run before I have breakfast, because this is the kapha time of day, as I mentioned earlier. So the kapha dosha is the energy of earth and water. It is heavy and slow. So we really want to counter that kapha energy by getting our bodies moving, by activating in some way. So maybe whatever that is you like to do, if it's a workout class, if it's a live stream workout class, just to walk around your neighborhood, weights, anything that you can do, climbing, bike riding, to get your body moving and activated during the kapha time will help so that you don't feel so much heaviness in that kapha time of day, which is from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. So after you've moved your body in whatever way feels good for you, whatever amount of time you're able to allow for that, it's really up to you. You will have breakfast, and in Ayurveda, we really recommend eating as much of your food warm and cooked as possible. In the West, this can be tricky. People are really attached to like cold sweet things for breakfast, like parfaits and cold cereal. And it's just not as easily digested as warm cooked foods. And that's something that we'll get into a lot in webinars where we talk about Ayurveda and digestion. So keep an eye out for those. But just know that eating warm cooked foods is a staple to an Ayurvedic daily routine, and you can start with breakfast. So let's skip ahead a bit to midday. So from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. is the pitta time of day, the fiery time of day, which means that you really want to make lunch your biggest meal of the day, because when the sun is highest in the sky, digestive fire, digestive capacity is strongest. So most able to process your food, most able to absorb and assimilate nutrients and turn them into energy and tissue and all of that. So we eat our biggest meal of the day during the pitta time of day. And again, this idea of when the sun is highest in the sky, digestive fire is strongest, is bringing us back to realigning with the rhythms of nature, right? That's just another way that we can be connecting to the natural world to honor and balance our bodies. And then the next key item on a daily routine, an Ayurvedic daily routine, would be to take a walk after lunch. And actually not just lunch, ideally every meal. Ideally you took a short walk after breakfast if you had time for it before work. But the bipedal motion of walking actually supports digestion. You don't have to walk very much. It could just be a lap around the block. It could be 10 minutes. It could be whatever you have time for. But if you eat a big lunch and then immediately sit down, you're probably going to feel pretty lethargic and tired for the rest of your day. When you're trying to get into your afternoon work, you might notice that you feel a real heaviness. So getting a little movement after a meal will support digestion so that you don't feel so tired and heavy. Very important. And then let's talk about the Vata time of day again. So from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m., we get back into the Vata time of day. Again, Vata dosha is the energy of air and space. It's very much like the wind. And this is a great time to start to practice like meditation or journaling, ideally right before dinner. So at the end of your workday, you come home and try to do just like a little meditation, a little journaling, or even just like a walk around the neighborhood. If that's your version of spiritual practice, that is great too. But because Vata dosha, again, this is during the Vata time of day before 6 p.m., because Vata dosha is it's lighter, it's subtle, it's like the wind. It's a good time to sort of connect to your more spiritual self or your more subtle mental, emotional health. And also just coming home from work and giving yourself a reset by meditating or journaling or reading a book is really going to help you successfully transition into the rest of your day. Okay, so then you'll have dinner, ideally warm cooked foods. Dinner is a lighter meal than lunch because as the sun goes down, digestive capacity goes down too. So you don't want to eat a big dinner late at night because it's just not going to digest as well, because your metabolism isn't as strong at night. And you might notice that like if you eat a big dinner late at night, that you don't feel as good in your body, you don't feel as light, you don't feel as easy, it doesn't feel as easy to get up the next morning. So big meal at lunch, smaller meal at dinner. Again, warm cooked foods is the Ayurvedic way. Join me for the digestion webinar to learn more about why that is. And then you want to sip warm herbal tea sometime in those early evening hours after dinner. In Ayurveda, we're always recommending warm beverages and generally just like sipping warm beverages throughout the day, but especially at the end of the day, it's a nice wind down. And when you're drinking a warm beverage like herbal tea or lemon water, the warmth will actually be more absorbable by the body because your body doesn't have to heat it up to then absorb it. It can just access it right away. So you might notice that you actually experience better hydration when you drink something warm. You could probably even drink a smaller amount of a warm tea and get the hydration that you need that way. So that's drinking herbal tea sometime after dinner is a really nice part of an evening routine. And then as you're starting to get ready for bed, I really recommend turning electronics off, putting screens aside 1 hour before bed, because the blue light of your computer screen, of your TV screen, of your phone screen is very activating to the nervous system. It makes your body think it's time to be awake. And it's also very stimulating. So it sort of aggravates Vata dosha. Vata dosha is active. It's not the dosha that's going to help put you to sleep. So if you can turn off electronics like an hour before bed, you can almost guarantee yourself a more restful night's sleep because your mind isn't in that active space as you're trying to go to sleep. For me, that means turning off electronics at 9 and going to bed by 10. You can figure out what that means for you. And then as you're getting ready for bed, another key Ayurvedic practice, maybe you've heard me talk about this before, you heard me mention it as a tip for balancing Vata, but actually it's great to support all doshas, especially when it comes to going to sleep. And that practice would be to massage oil into the soles of your feet before bed. So for Vata type people, sesame oil is really good because it's the heaviest and the most grounding. For Pitta and Kapha types, you might steer more toward like sunflower. Almond oil is also a good option for all dosha types. I wouldn't use coconut oil. People ask about that a lot. I wouldn't use coconut oil unless it's summertime or you're a Pitta person that runs very hot, but otherwise coconut oil is a little bit cooling. So I would stick to more of the almond or sunflower, which are still pretty light and pretty tridoshic. That means all dosha types could use those oils. So you just take a few minutes before bed and massage a small amount of oil into both of your feet. The idea behind this is that it helps ground the energy of Vata dosha that we're all feeling at the end of the day. And that is the energy that creates sort of anxiety and insomnia and a busy mind. So if we can calm Vata dosha by quite literally helping ourselves feel more grounded by applying a grounding substance, oil, to our feet, it will actually help us experience a more restful night's sleep. And that's something that we could all benefit from right now, especially at a particularly stressful time. Oiling the soles of the feet is a great daily routine item, a great self-care practice for stress reduction. And it feels so nice. And some people are like, but I don't want to get oil on my bed sheets. So you have a couple options. One, you can use a very small amount, very, very small amount, not enough to get on your sheets. Two, you could put on socks. Either will work. It's not going to ruin your sheets. And it really should help you fall asleep. And then lastly, from the Ayurvedic perspective, you really want to try to go to bed by 10 p.m. I know that might sound crazy for some people, but basically, as I mentioned, from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. is the Pitta time of day again. So you might notice that if you stay awake into the Pitta time of day, that you actually feel sort of reactivated. And you want to get things done and you like have a lot of ideas. The problem with that is that that energy of activation is actually the energy that your body would have used to detoxify your liver and do sort of other essential processes that your body does when you're sleeping. So ideally you use the first Pitta time of day from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. to really get activated and to get excited and to work on your focus projects. And at night, you let yourself go to sleep so that your body can start doing essential processes so that your liver can detoxify from that sort of 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. time. So really important time to be asleep. And I really find that the difference between going to bed like at 9:45 versus even 10:15 for me is huge. If I'm in bed by 9:45, I fall right to sleep. I sleep through the night basically. If I try to go to bed at 10:15, I notice that it's harder, that I feel this sort of fight in myself to want to like do things and have ideas. I start to feel myself becoming reactivated, and then I might not fall asleep for an hour. So I really try to go to bed by around 10. The earlier you go to bed, the easier it is to wake up with or just before the sun and start your daily routine the next day. So that's a very basic outline of an Ayurvedic daily routine. You can use those as ideas to think about what sounded most exciting to you, what sounds like the most fun to you, and take those items and start with those. You don't have to do it all. I don't expect you to take the whole daily routine and implement it tomorrow immediately. I really want you to implement this idea of slow, sustainable shifts, which is the key to Ayurveda. So generally, I recommend that people choose 3 practices that they want to focus on. And once you get those down, whether that's a couple weeks or a few days, then you can add in some more. But start small so that you can actually experience success and really give yourself the chance to make a change that lasts, rather than feeling so overwhelmed that you just don't do anything at all. Other tips for making your own daily routine, something that really helps me is to, if I like write it out as a list, I like to divide it up into 3 parts: morning, midday, and evening, and give myself like anywhere from 1 to 3 items in each category. So in the morning, I might say, drink warm lemon honey water, exercise, take a walk after breakfast. Those might be my 3. And then I set myself up with another little reminder for the middle of the day, and then a reminder for my evening routine. I just like to handwrite it. And that really helps me to break it up into pieces. So rather than feeling like I'm remembering 7 or 8 or 9 things, I'm just remembering 3 things for the morning, a couple things for the afternoon, a couple things for the evening. And I also recommend writing it down if you can, or typing it up, or putting it in a note on your phone. Putting your daily routine somewhere that you can and will see it every day, because it really can be a tool or a reminder to hold you accountable for the practices that you want to do. But it's hard to do them if you don't remember them. It's hard to remember them if you're not seeing them. So set yourself up for success by writing it down or printing it out and putting it somewhere that you can see those reminders daily. And as I mentioned, start small and add things in slowly. And if you're looking for another resource to start incorporating a daily routine, if you're not sure what items you want to start with, you can go to my website and find the Basic Balance Challenge, which is essentially a 21-day challenge that gives you 4 very simple, very key items in a daily routine. And the idea is that you stick to those 4 items for 21 days. So that's a really good starting point, a really good tool for accountability. If you feel like you want just a little more support, that's called the Basic Balance Challenge. It's on my website, cultivatebalance.com. And now let's talk a little bit more specifically about some self-care rituals. So everything that we just talked about, I would put in the category of daily routine. So those are all things that you can do every single day. When I get into the more dense self-care rituals, I often recommend them as weekly practices so that it feels a little more attainable, because some self-care rituals, especially in Ayurveda, can be a little more involved, and we don't always feel like we have time for that sort of thing every day. So I usually like to pick one day a week, like Sunday, to do a more in-depth self-care practice. One self-care practice that you could be doing a couple of times a week that's pretty simple would be a saltwater turmeric gargle. It's really good for like cleansing bacteria. Basically, salt is antibacterial, turmeric is anti-inflammatory. So that's one thing that you can be doing to support immunity or to prevent like colds, flus, etc. So if you wanted to try that, I would recommend taking just like a 1/4 teaspoon turmeric powder, 1/4 teaspoon salt in warm water, let it dissolve, take some in your mouth, gurgle it, spit it out, do that a few times. And that's a self-care practice that you could be doing to support immunity or to prevent the spread of colds and flus in your weekly routine. It's not necessarily something you have to do every day, but you could. Doesn't take that long. And then another practice, also related sort of to mouth health, as you're understanding, this is pretty important. We already talked about tongue scraping. I just talked about gargling salt and turmeric water. Another self-care ritual is oil pulling. Maybe you've heard of that before. That's one of those Ayurvedic practices that has really made its way into the mainstream. Before I started practicing and learning about Ayurveda, that was one of the things that I knew about and was like experimenting in my own life many years ago. So to oil pull, you would take about a teaspoon of coconut oil or sesame oil. I mean, you can really do any oil. I personally prefer coconut. So you take about a teaspoon of coconut oil in your mouth. You can chew it up a little bit to soften it, and then you just want to swish it around for ideally 15 minutes. If you can only do 10, that's okay. But you'll swish it around your mouth between your teeth. It's very cleansing to the teeth and gums. It's gonna help get bacteria out of the mouth. It's also like good for whitening and general mouth hygiene. I see that I have another question here. I'm going to come back to questions at the very end to just make sure we get through all of this in the next 10 minutes. So oil pulling, great for oral health, which is a big part of Ayurveda. That's something that you can do 1 to 2 times a week. Teaspoon of oil, swish it around your mouth for about 15 minutes. Spit it out in the sink or the compost or the trash, you decide. And then generally after I do that, I like to just rinse my mouth with a little bit of warm water and then spit that out too, because you can get sort of an oily texture in your mouth. If you want to read more about the benefits of oil pulling, I have a whole blog about it on my website. It's called like The Wonders of Oil Pulling. That will give you a little more explanation of that. We're going to go through 2 more self-care rituals. The next one is called Abhyanga. That means self-oil massage. So when you oil the soles of your feet before bed, you are practicing Abhyanga, practicing oil massage, but only on the feet. And what I'm referring to is actually the practice of oiling your whole body, which takes some time, which is why I recommend just choosing 1 day a week to do this practice. Again, I like to do it on Sundays. So Abhyanga is really a key practice in Ayurveda. It's super nourishing to the entire body. It helps the flow of lymph because you're literally massaging your own body. It's great for the skin. It's great for, honestly, like a million things. It's like the key practice of Ayurveda. If you've heard of Panchakarma Ayurvedic cleansing, you know that Abhyanga is a big part of that also. So when you're practicing Abhyanga on your body, a couple things to know about that. One would be is that the traditional way to oil your body is actually to do it before a shower or a bath, because the idea is that the heat from the shower or bath actually opens up the pores and helps your body better absorb the oil. It's pretty interesting to think about. If you don't want to do it before the bath or shower, people don't always love that. You can actually apply oil in the shower to your body. And again, the heat will help the oil penetrate. It's not just going to wash it all down the drain. And you could also do it after a shower. It's not going to absorb quite as well, but if your skin is still warm and has a little moisture on it, that will help the oil absorb. And then when you're applying oil to your body for Abhyanga, you want to do long strokes on the bones and circular strokes on the joints. You generally want to go toward the heart because that's going to help move your lymph. It's going to help with detoxification of the body. And it's also great for circulation to do Abhyanga. It's like good for a million things. So you oil your whole body. Ideally, you would give yourself like 30 minutes or more to do this practice. It's like really a practice in like being with yourself and loving yourself. It took me a while to get into it, honestly, because I was like, wow, this is a lot of time to just be with my body. We're not used to being with ourselves in that way often. So it's a good opportunity to just be mindful and to be present with yourself and to slow down. And touch is so important. And especially now, if you can't be touching other people in this pandemic, experiencing touch for yourself is also very important. And lastly, an Ayurvedic self-care ritual is dry brushing, which someone asked about. Dry brushing is similar to Abhyanga in the way that we do it, but basically you're going to get like a soft bristle brush, or even a raw silk glove. You can find them on Etsy. That's the more traditional way to do it. And you're going to to basically give yourself a dry body massage. And again, same thing of long strokes on the bones, circular strokes on the joints. Abhyanga is very activating because it's dry and rough. So it's especially good for people with a lot of kapha dosha. If you're feeling those kapha type imbalances like heaviness or lethargy, abhyanga or dry brushing is going to be a really great practice for you. It's also a really great practice for kapha type people because it's balancing for the kapha constitution, which is sort of slow and heavy, and it's really balanced by that dry, rough friction, that energy of movement. But spring season is also a kapha season. So during the spring, we're all experiencing a little more like heaviness, more of that earth and water energy in our bodies, and we could all use more. All dosha types could use more of this activating energy. So in the spring, everyone could really be dry brushing once or twice a week. Kaphas could probably be doing it every day. Kapha type people could also use a rougher brush. If you're a Vata or Pitta type, you might actually want to use something a little bit softer, like a raw silk glove, just because generally Pittas have more sensitive skin, so you want to be careful about that. Kaphas tend to have thicker skin and aren't as irritated by the roughness of a bristle brush. So we've really gone through all of it, daily routine and self-care practices. I really wanted to offer things that were simple enough that you could start incorporating them, and I really wanted to explain why they were important. I hope that this has been very helpful for you. I'd love it if on your own you just started to think about what Ayurvedic practices do you already implement? What practices are you excited to implement? What's one thing that you want to start tomorrow? Maybe just start reflecting on these things. I'm also always open to what people want to learn more about. So do let me know what you're interested in. Just a couple other things to mention. Be on the lookout for many other webinars from Cultivate Balance. We have one about Ayurveda for better energy, for digestion. We're going to have one on spring detoxing. There's so much, and we'd love to continue to connect with you. If you're really interested in learning more about Ayurveda, and if you're especially interested in getting into the depths of daily routine, you might consider enrolling in our online course. It's called The Art of Ayurveda. It's a 3-part course. It's very comprehensive. It'll give you everything you need to know about the basics of doshas, disease prevention, preventing toxins, supporting digestion, supporting energy, mood, daily routine, spiritual resilience. All of that is in the Art of Ayurveda. So that's one way to keep engaging with this material. You can find it on our website, cultivatebalance.com. We also have quizzes on the website if you want to learn your mind-body constitution. We also have a digestive quiz if you want to start to understand what's going on with your digestion and how to balance it. You can find tons of blogs on our website. Like I said, there's a blog about oil pulling, as well as recipes and other things to get into. And just remember, self-care is really about being gentle and being kind and intentional to yourself. The reason that we do that is so that we can take better care of others, so that we can show up better to our work, better to our communities, and ultimately better to the planet. That's why we do all of it. So I am going to pause this